Hello everyone and welcome. As promised, I'm following up my last Sekiro video answering your questions. The questions will appear on screen before each answer, with an option to skip to the next question if you don't want the spoilers of a particular subject. I will also be unboxing the Collector's Edition for Sekiro for the PS4. Thank you very much to ActivisionUK for sending me that. It will give you guys a good idea of what's inside if you are interested. Coming up to 3,000 comments. There's a lot of interest in this game, it seems. One huge thing that kept getting mentioned was the release, so I'll clarify that before we begin. This is very unusual for From Software. It might be a first. Sekiro is releasing on all current gen consoles and PC simultaneously on the 22nd March worldwide. In the past, they've always had platform exclusives and staggered release dates, but this time it should all be available at the same time everywhere. So first question, let's tackle the combat. The combat in a lot of ways is brand spanking new from FromSoft. In an interview, Hidetaka Miyazaki stated, "We have created a brand new combat system specifically for this game." Two keywords when designing the system were intensity and dynamism. This game is about delicately maneuvering around your environment, grappling and utilizing your skills as a shinobi ninja. That's the dynamism. Yet when it comes down to business, you will be clashing katanas with a wide variety of enemies, both in keeping with the time period of Sengoku Japan, but also enemies with From Software's unique supernatural fantasy twists. When you aren't using stealth to sneak past enemies, you'll be engaging with a katana in the right hand and a prosthetic shinobi arm for the left, which you can attach various tools and upgrades to, such as axes, shurikens, and fire attacks. These tools are discovered as you play through the game, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more we haven't been shown yet. You have a standard health bar, which works how you'd expect, but now also a posture bar, and the same goes for all of your opponents. Posture could be thought of as poise or balance. If an enemy hits you enough to where they knock you off balance, depleting your posture, you'll be knocked down and left very vulnerable to attacks. If you attack enough to knock your opponent off balance, however, you deplete their posture, it opens them up for a vicious critical strike, which will outright kill weaker enemies, but will need to be executed multiple times on the more elite enemies. There are other versions of these critical strikes. These include plunging death blows and stealth backstabs. Deflecting is the key addition here. This is what I'm finding hardest to get my head around so far. To successfully deflect an attack, you just need to quickly tap the block button right as an attack is about to hit you. Doing this correctly blocks damage, but also lowers your opponent's posture and allows you to counterattack. However, there seems to be situations where attempting to block an attack is not advised. These are called perilous attacks, emphasized by a brief red symbol. This alert requires you to consider what attack is coming your way and react appropriately, either deflecting, jumping over a sweeping attack, or dodging around something more direct. In terms of katana abilities, we've now seen short glimpses of a skill tree. This character progression involves investing skill points into skills available on the skill trees, which are accessed from a sculptor's idol. There are three different types: combat arts, shinobi martial arts, and latent skills. I believe you can only have a few combat arts equipped at a time, and they have to be equipped to use, whereas the other two shinobi martial arts and latent skills are permanent effects once you unlock them. Quick intermission before we move on. I haven't really gotten any questions specifically about the Collector's Edition, but I assume a lot of you want to know what it's like and what's inside. So again, thanks to Activision UK, they kindly sent me one to unbox, so let's take a look. Is there a Moonlight washing pole? Okay, so what you're referring to is From Software's classic Easter eggs. In most From Software titles, from Dark Souls to Bloodborne to Kingsfield to Armored Core, they've all featured reoccurring versions of the Moonlight Sword, and they have repeated characters like patches. So will these beloved staples appear in Sekiro? Well, I think you have to look at what the stated design philosophies have been so far, and they've really pushed the fact that they're attempting to branch out creatively and try something new more than anything else. Yasuhiro Kitao, he's the marketing and communications manager over there, and he said, We're very sorry to say, but it doesn't actually appear in the game at all, referring to these in-game references. So maybe they're trying to minimize unnecessary fan service, or maybe they just don't want to be forced to repeat old references. I think what's happened is we've realized it's probably easier to understand this game if you start from scratch, with a more open mindset, rather than copy and pasting your Souls experience into Sekiro, because that doesn't seem to be what they're doing. Just keep your Souls knowledge in the back of your mind. It will help in many areas, but if you treat Sekiro like a new experience, personally I think you might have less frustrations. But of course it's up to you, do whatever feels comfortable. Somebody asked about fish AI. So swimming, yes, I think it's quite a big step. Again, fitting in with From Software's intentions on experimenting with core gameplay. The way I'm looking at traversing through the water so far is almost the same as the freedom granted by Sekiro's other movement options, along with being able to leap around obstacles, climb up walls, effortlessly fly through the air using our grapple, crawl under buildings, slither through the undergrowth. We also now have the ability to swim where we please. More or less anyway, there are some invisible barriers. But we can dive underneath a guarded bridge, rather than fight over on foot, for example. There's simply more options on how you can approach situations. Now I can't deny there were indeed fishes that I could lock onto. Does that mean we will face terrifying sea creatures, potentially even underwater bosses? I saw some people speculating. I reckon there will be some swimming fights here and there, but you couldn't dive underwater from what I saw, and I don't think you could get extensive combat working particularly well in the water here, but who knows? If I had to guess though, I'd view the swimming more as a new frontier available to you in terms of maneuvering around the levels. The Dragon Rot system. Okay, this is all to do with death, so let's get gloomy for a second. When you die in this game, you may get the choice to resurrect. Whether you do or not depends on your 2 resurrection charges. These are the pink circular symbols in the bottom left. The charge on the left is the one you earn through killing enemies and has a circular progression meter that you can fill up. The charge on the right is the free one you get from respawning or resting at Sculptor's Idols, which are the checkpoints in the game. If you use a resurrection charge, your resurrection ability becomes locked. In terms of recharging the left one by killing enemies, I think only death blow attacks count. If you can't resurrect or you choose not to, you'll spawn back at the last Sculptor's Idol and you lose half of all the points you've gathered and half of your money, which is called Sen, which is what you use to upgrade the Shinobi prosthetic. And you aren't getting these back. There's no bloodstains to run back to and pick up your stuff this time. There is another new mechanic though, called Unseen Aid. This is some higher divine power helping us out, and if you happen to be blessed with this aid, you won't lose anything. There's an actual variable percentage chance of this happening. You can see it's 30% here, but then later on, as I've accrued more Dragon Rot, it's down to 15%. This is because of the dreaded Dragon Rot sickness, which is what this question wanted to know more about. It's quite a mysterious unknown at this point, to be honest, but what we do know is repeated death has story and world implications. The characters you meet all play important roles and of course are integral to the story. And yet as you keep dying, these relationships you make take a dark turn as each person begins to get infected with Dragon Rot. Our sculptor contracts the sickness, as do other characters we meet along our journey. So the very power that gives us our ability to revive, our dragon's heritage, also causes a sickness spreading throughout the world. One direct consequence of this is the more rot that builds up, the lower your chances of receiving unseen aid becomes. There will be ways to limit this spread and even cure the afflicted, with rare items such as the dragon's blood droplet. And in fact, the search for a cure starts quite promptly with Emma the physician as you bring her infected blood samples. The next question is asking for clarity on the eavesdropping mechanic. This is a nice touch which helps the world to feel very much alive and give the impression that events are happening without you causing them. As you explore more, you'll come across various opportunities to sneak around and listen to conversations, often providing valuable contextual information. From a group of drunken bandits around a fire, you can begin to piece together why they're invading the Hirata estates. By listening further on to a conversation through a window, you hear that amongst the bandits is a very powerful foe. And in fact, you end up meeting him. It turns out to be this powerful shinobi hunter wielding a spear later on. Who kept killing me, by the way. Anyway, I think that wraps it up for now. With literally just a couple days to go until worldwide release on the 22nd March, I'm excited, I'm ready. A large portion of you presumably aren't subscribed because Sekiro isn't out yet, but it's almost here and we're going to have some fun exploring this new world. So click subscribe, like the video or dislike it depending on how you felt as always, and I'll see you very shortly.